If you heat your home with wood, or even if you just have a fire pit in the backyard, you know the routine. By late winter, you end up with a problem. You have buckets of cold gray ash piling up on the back porch. You look at it and you know there is value there. You have heard the old advice. The old timers will tell you to just take it out and scatter it on the garden. They say it is good for the soil. They say it sweetens the ground. So you go out there. Maybe you dust it over your winter garlic, or you spread it where you plan to put your tomatoes. You feel responsible. You are returning nutrients to the earth. It feels like the right thing to do. But then a few weeks later, you see the result. You see the edges of your leaves turning yellow and crispy. You see plants that just stop growing, looking stunned and brittle. You walk out to the garden expecting abundance, but it looks like you sprayed herbicide. I learned this lesson the hard way about 20 years ago. I killed an entire bed of onions because I thought more was better. I thought I was feeding my family, but I was actually shocking the soil. The problem is that raw wood ash is aggressive, it is chemically hot. When you take dry ash and dump it directly onto your garden beds, you are introducing a massive sudden spike in alkalinity. In its raw form, when that powder hits the soil moisture, it creates a caustic reaction. It can burn the microscopic feeder roots that your plants rely on. It can lock up other nutrients in the soil so the plants can't access them. You are trying to give your garden a drink, but you are using a fire hose. It is too much, too fast. Because of this, many people get scared off. They stop using ash altogether. They dump it in the woods or throw it in the trash, thinking it is too dangerous to use. That is a waste of one of the most powerful resources on your homestead. We need to reframe how we look at that gray powder. Think about what a tree actually is. For 40, 50, maybe 100 years, that tree stood in one spot. Its roots went down deep past the topsoil, past the clay, weaving into the subsoil and the bedrock. That tree spent decades mining the earth for minerals that your shallow, rooted vegetables could never reach. It pulled up calcium. It pulled up potassium. It pulled up magnesium and dozens of trace elements. When you burn that wood in your stove, the carbon goes up the chimney as heat and smoke. But the minerals do not burn. They stay in the firebox. That bucket of ash isn't garbage. It is the concentrated mineral density of a 100-year-old tree distilled down into a few pounds of powder. It is pure potential energy. The mistake isn't using the ash. The mistake is the delivery system. We have been taught to treat it like a dry amendment, like lime or sand. But to truly harness it without hurting your garden, we need to change its state. We need to turn that aggressive dry powder into a gentle, bioavailable liquid. We need a system that unlocks that power safely so your plants can actually drink it up. Before we get to the buckets and the water, we need to understand exactly what we are working with. If you don't respect the chemistry, you can't use the tool. When you look at that gray dust, you are looking at what I like to call white coal, or more accurately, the mineral backbone of the forest. When wood burns, the fire consumes the organic matter. It burns off the nitrogen and sends it up the chimney as smoke. That is why ash isn't a balanced fertilizer like compost or manure. It has zero nitrogen. What remains in the firebox is everything that couldn't burn. It is mostly calcium, about 20% or more, which is the building block of plant cell walls. It is like the skeleton of the plant. Then you have potassium or potash. This is the engine that drives water movement in a plant. It helps fruit ripen and makes vegetables sweet. It is what gives a tomato its flavor and a carrot its crunch. And wrapped up in there are magnesium, phosphorus, and dozens of trace elements that our depleted soils are often desperate for. Now you will see videos online or hear people talking about fermented wood ash. That is a popular buzzword right now. I want to be clear with you. We aren't technically fermenting anything. Fermentation requires biology. It needs bacteria eating sugar and creating life. Wood ash is sterile. It has come out of a fire that burned at over 1,000 degrees. There is no life in it. So when we talk about the system, we aren't brewing a living tea like compost tea. We are doing an extraction. We are using water as a solvent. Think of it like making coffee. If you eat dry coffee grounds, your stomach is going to hurt and you won't get the caffeine hit the way you want. But if you run hot water through those grounds, You extract the oil and the flavor into a liquid that your body can absorb instantly. That is what we are doing with the ash. When we soak it in water, we are leaching out that potash and those soluble minerals. We are separating the useful nutrients from the grit and the heavy solids. This liquid state changes everything. When you sprinkle dry ash on the soil, it sits there. It creates a crust. If the wind blows, it's gone. If a heavy rain comes, it washes away in a clump. But when you turn it into a liquid concentrate, you are pre-dissolving the minerals. You are doing the hard work for the plant. By suspending it in water, we also gain control. We can dilute it. We can adjust the strength. You can't unspread a handful of dry powder, but you can always add more water to a bucket. We are taking a raw, somewhat dangerous industrial byproduct and turning it into a precise, gentle feed that moves right down to the root zone where the work happens. Now we are going to build the extraction station. This is the core of the system, and the beauty of it is that it requires almost zero active labor. You are going to let time and water do the heavy lifting for you. First, you need the right vessel. This is non-negotiable. You need a standard 5-gallon bucket, and it must be plastic. Do not use a galvanized steel bucket. Do not use your grandmother's aluminum pot. The liquid we are creating is caustic. It is alkaline. It will eat through metal and react with it, ruining your container and contaminating the solution. A simple, clean, food-grade plastic bucket is the only tool you need. Here is the ratio I have used for years. It is easy to remember, so you won't need to write it down. Use 1 cup of sifted gray wood ash for every 1 gallon of water. For a standard 5-gallon bucket, that means you dump in 4 cups of ash and fill it up with water, leaving a little room at the top so you don't spill. Use the best water you have. If you have a rain barrel, use rainwater. It is naturally soft and free of the chlorine or chloramine found in city water. If you only have tap water, let it sit out in the bucket for a day first so the chlorine can off-gas. Then add your ash. Once the ash and water are in the bucket, give it a stir. I use a dedicated wooden stick for this. Don't use your bare hands. The water will turn instantly gray, cloudy, and ugly. It will look like a mess. That is normal. Now you stop. You walk away. This is where the fermentation idea comes from. Even though we know it is actually steeping, you need to let this bucket sit for at least 3 to 4 days. Put it in the corner of the garage or under the eaves of the shed. Cover it loosely with a board or a lid to keep leaves and squirrels out, but you don't need to seal it airtight. Over those 3 days, a physical separation is happening. The heavy carbon bits, the grit, and the insoluble solids are slowly drifting to the bottom. Meanwhile, the water is pulling that potassium and those micronutrients out of the ash and holding them in suspension. When you come back on day 4, the transformation is striking. The liquid will no longer be gray. If you have done it right, and if your wood was good hardwood, the water will have turned a color somewhere between weak tea and light amber. It looks clear, not cloudy. That golden water floating on top is your concentrate. It is loaded with bioavailable nutrition, unlocked and ready to work. The sludge at the bottom is just the spent husk. You have successfully captured the essence of the tree in a bottle. This is the moment where you have to be disciplined. You have your bucket of amber liquid. It looks harmless. It might look a bit like apple cider or weak tea, but you need to understand that what you have created is a highly potent alkaline concentrate. If you were to stick your finger in that bucket and rub your thumb against it, it would feel slippery, almost like soap. That is the feeling of a high pH base reacting with the oils in your skin. It is caustic. If you pour this concentrate directly onto a tomato plant, you will kill it just as fast as if you had dumped the hot ash on it. You have to treat this liquid like a concentrate, not a finished product. The rule of thumb here is what I call the tea color test. We are not working in a laboratory, so we don't need pipettes and scales. We need a visual guide that works every time. Take a standard 2-gallon watering can, dip a cup or a ladle into your concentrate bucket. Try not to disturb the sludge at the bottom and pour just 1 or 2 cups of that golden liquid into your watering can. Then fill the rest up with plain hose water. Watch the color change. You are looking for the color of very weak iced tea. If it looks like dark coffee, it is too strong. Pour some out and add more water. If it looks like clear water, add a splash more concentrate. You want a pale, transparent amber tint. That is the sweet spot. At this dilution, the pH drops from a burning level down to a gentle range that the soil can buffer instantly. This is the discipline of the weekly method. It is far better to give your plants a weak dose of this nutrient tea once a week than to hit them with a strong dose once a month. We are mimicking nature here. Nature feeds plants in small, steady trickles. A little bit of mineral runoff every time it rains, not in massive feasts. When you apply it, keep the spout low. We are feeding the soil, not the leaves. Pour it in a ring around the base of the plant, right at the drip line where the feeder roots are waiting. Don't splash it on the foliage. Even diluted, those salts can scorch a tender leaf in the midday sun. You want to deliver this energy straight to the root zone where the plant can drink it up immediately. Now that you have your system for making and diluting this liquid gold, the next question is, when do you use it? Just because you have a hammer doesn't mean everything is a nail. If you use this on the wrong crop at the wrong time, you won't get the results you want. You have to learn to read the rhythm of your garden. In the early spring, when your plants are just green shoots, your lettuce, your spinach, the young corn stalks, they don't need this yet. At that stage, they are hungry for nitrogen to build green leaves. If you hit them with a heavy dose of wood ash now, you might actually stunt them or trigger them to bolt. Go to seed too early. The green light for this system is the moment you see the shift from leaf to fruit. Watch your tomato plants. Watch your squash, your peppers, your beans. The day you see the first tiny flower bud appear, that is your signal. That plant is telling you, I am done building my skeleton. Now I am ready to make babies. That is when the plant's hunger shifts from nitrogen to potassium. Potassium is the nutrient that drives flowering and fruiting. It determines the size of the tomato, the sweetness of the melon, and the shelf life of the onion. This is when you start your weekly rotation. Every week or every other week, give them a drink of that tea-colored water. You are feeding the engine exactly when it is revving up, but you also need to know when to stop. Never use this on acid-loving plants. Blueberries, azaleas, rhododendrons, they hate this stuff. They need acidic soil to survive, and wood ash is alkaline. If you feed them this, you will lock out their iron and turn them yellow, and keep it away from your potato patch. Potatoes love potassium, but the alkalinity encourages potato scab, which makes the skins rough and corky. Finally, understand what is happening underground. We aren't just force-feeding chemicals to a root. When you pour this liquid into the soil, you are stimulating the biology. The calcium and minerals in that water feed the bacteria and fungi in the soil. It wakes them up, and in turn, those microbes process the nutrients and hand deliver them to the plant roots. You are working with the living system of the soil, not bypassing it. There is a quiet satisfaction in this system that goes beyond just saving a few dollars on fertilizer. When you master this simple process, taking the waste from your wood stove and turning it into food for your garden, you are doing something that has become very rare in our modern world. You are closing the loop on your own land. Think about the cycle you have created. The tree grew from the soil on your land or your neighbor's land. You used it to keep your family warm through the winter. And now, instead of throwing the remains away, you are returning that mineral wealth back to the earth to grow the food that will feed your family next winter. Nothing is lost. Nothing is wasted. You aren't just a consumer anymore. You are a steward of a complete system. For me, the real payoff is the feeling I get when I walk into the hardware store in the spring. I walk right past the aisles stacked with colorful plastic bottles of blue crystals and synthetic plant food. I don't need them. I know exactly what is feeding my tomatoes. And I know it didn't come from a factory. It came from the maple and oak trees out back. That little bit of independence, knowing you can provide for your own needs using what you already have, is worth more than any record-breaking pumpkin. If this feels like a lot to take in, don't try to change your whole garden routine overnight. You don't need to save every speck of ash this winter. Just start with one bucket. Get one 5-gallon pail. Sift some ash. Let it soak. Pick one row of peppers or one bed of tomatoes and try it out. Watch how the plants respond. Watch how the leaves turn a deeper, richer green. See for yourself how a little bit of patience and a bucket of water can turn a waste product into a resource. Once you see it work, you won't need me to convince you to do it again next year. You will just do it because it makes sense. If this guide on liquid gold has changed the way you look at the ash in your fireplace, please subscribe and like the channel. We are dedicated to uncovering the ancient homesteading secrets that have been nearly forgotten. Let's cultivate a more self-reliant future together. The next treasure of traditional wisdom will be shared very soon.